We got you updated. This is Radio Imanzi News in English.
This is Radio Imanzi, broadcasting from Kigali. Here is the news in English, brought to you by Fiona Umukanwa. The headlines. The Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jan Lipavsky, has received the Rwandan Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Vincent Biruta. The Parliament of Rwanda is to host the 77th session of the Executive Committee of African Parliamentary Union in Kigali. The National Police have apprehended 2 major drug dealers in Rulindo and Nyabihu districts. Ukraine said today there was a danger of a radiation leak at the Chernobyl nuclear power. Now the news in detail. The Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jan Lipavsky, has received the Rwandan Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Vincent Biruta. The ministers' discussion focused on deepening of bilateral relations and economic cooperation between the Czech Republic and Rwanda. The ministers further assessed the state of the legal framework existing between the two countries. Negotiations are currently underway on the double taxation agreement and the air transport agreement. At the end of the meeting, Minister Lipavsky and Minister Biruta signed a memorandum of understanding establishing a mechanism for regular consultations between the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic and Rwanda. The Parliament of Rwanda is to host the 77th session of the Executive Committee of African Parliamentary Union in Kigali from March 10th to 11th, in which the country will share its best practices in terms of good governance. According to a statement issued by the Parliament of Rwanda today, more than 120 delegates from 41 parliaments are expected to attend this forum. The statement indicates that the session, serving as an ideal platform for delegates to learn from each other, will afford Rwandan parliamentarians an excellent opportunity to share Rwanda's best practices in terms of good governance, Rwanda's innovation and successes in response to COVID-19, and efforts towards accelerating economic recovery and implementing the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. The cost of crossing the Rwanda-Uganda border is restricting movement between the two countries, as passengers are required to pay for the COVID-19 PCR test, which many have complained is too expensive. The travelers who want to cross between the two countries are currently required to pay $29 for the PCR test. When added to travel costs, especially for families, travelers claim that the cost is too exorbitant. The requirement to pay the PCR COVID-19 test only applies to the Rwanda-Uganda border. Those traveling to the Democratic Republic of Congo and Tanzania from Rwanda are only required to show a passport with a rapid COVID-19 test, which costs $5. Dr. Eric Ndushabandi, a political science professor at the University of Rwanda, said the movement at the Gatuna border has to be controlled, at least for now, to avoid people pouring into a country that has a record for mistreating Rwandans. Rwanda still needs to cautiously confirm if it is safe to let free movement resume. The National Police have apprehended 2 major drug dealers in Rulindo and Nyabihu districts with combined 12 kilograms and 115 pellets of cannabis. Vestin Ladukunda was apprehended in Basi sector, Rulindo district, with a bundle containing 12 kilograms of cannabis. Meanwhile, Jean-Pierre Hatizimana was arrested in Jenda sector of Nyabihu district with 115 pellets of cannabis. The Northern Region Political and Civic Education Officer, Superintendent of Police, Alex Ndaisenga, said that Iradukunda was arrested due to information provided by local residents. Meanwhile, Jean-Pierre Hatizimana was arrested red-handed. According to the law, any person who unlawfully produces, transforms, transports, stores, gives to another, or who sells narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances commits an offense. The offender is liable to between 20 years and life imprisonment and a fine of between 20 million Rwandan francs and 30 million Rwandan francs. Workers who built the Rukomo sector's water supply system claim that the MJ Construction Limited Company still owes them money from the job last year in October. The Deputy Mayor for Economic Development in Gicumbi District, Uwer Parfete, says they will investigate why the company has not yet paid the workers. However, an employee of the MJ Construction Limited Company, Mugwanaseka Jean-Claude, assured the workers they will be paid in 1 week.
Some items of international news on Radio Imanzi.
The Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan has outlined key areas the government is focusing on to bring about participatory development, including ensuring that women are economically empowered. Speaking in Zanzibar, where the International Women's Day was marked nationally, President Hassan said the focus was on the global COVID-19 pandemic and how Tanzania should cope, rising oil prices, women in decision-making positions, and efforts to end gender-based violence. The national event in Tanzania carried the 2 themes: a generation of justice and equality for sustainable development, come forward to be counted, and focus on gender equality to address climate change for sustainable living. The President of Zanzibar, Dr. Hussein Mwinyi, outlined measures his government is taking to ensure that gender equality is taken into account, including empowering women economically and increasing their number in the government. A group of 16 media professionals have signed a petition condemning Ethiopian government for mistreating media practitioners, which they attribute the shrinking press freedom. The group said shrinking media space had forced some journalists to quit while others fled to exile. For decades, Ethiopia had carved a reputation for itself as one of the world's top jailers of journalists due to institutional and systemic crackdowns on critical voices and intolerance on dissent. Ethiopia's infamous anti-terror proclamation, passed into law in 2009, paved the way for journalists to be charged with treason, terrorism, and be sentenced to life in prison. This led to scores of Ethiopian journalists being arrested or forced into exile and served as pretext to shut down broadcast and print outlets which did not cater to pro-government narratives. A Somali women's lobby has criticized criticized leaders of federal states for doing little to achieve the necessary gender quotas that would have seen more female legislators in the new Somalia parliament. The Somali Women Association chairperson, Batula Ahmed Gabale, says women have failed to garner at least 30% of the seats because the regional presidents did not create opportunities. She was speaking at an event in the capital Mogadishu of the Women Goodwill Ambassadors, a committee of prominent civil society activists committed to securing the women quota. In the ongoing lower house election of 275 legislators, it was agreed that at least 30% of seats were supposed to be allocated for women. She stressed that the agreed outcome of having a woman MP in every 3 elected legislators was being abused. She was referring to an agreement by the National Consultative Council that each clan with three seats must allocate a slot for a woman. The Nigerian President, Muhammad Buhari, has confirmed the killing of at least 63 vigilantes from 5 communities of Nigeria's northwest Kebbi state in ambush. He expressed sadness over what he described as the brutal murder of tens of vigilante members in Kebbi state by bandits who ambushed them in the Sakawa area. While extending his sympathy to the families of the victims of this savagery, he also called on the security forces to be more proactive and redouble their efforts in order to frustrate the operational plans of the terrorists before they even launch attacks. Iran is holding talks with the Taliban to resume construction of a railway project that ultimately aims to connect at least 5 Central Asian countries. According to Iranian transit official Abbas Katibi, Iran is ready to make further investments, and both sides are willing to finish construction on a rail line connecting Kaf in northeastern Iran with Herat in northwestern Afghanistan. The project is part of a proposed $2 billion 5-nations railway corridor, which would run through China, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and Iran for an estimated 2,000 kilometers. Ukraine said today there was a danger of a radiation leak at the Chernobyl nuclear power station after electricity was cut off to the plant. But the UN nuclear watchdog saw no critical impact on security. The state-run company Energoatom said a high-voltage power line had been damaged during fighting between Ukrainian troops and Russian forces who are occupying the defunct plant, and that it had been cut from the national power grid. It said radioactive substances could be released, threatening other parts of Ukraine and Europe if there was no power to cool spent nuclear fuel stored at the plant.
Economic news is a regular feature on Radio Imanzi.
The Rwanda Stock Exchange Market Report. Today's trading session recorded 1,552,500 Rwandan francs worth of bonds traded in one deal on the fixed income market, and 13,500 Rwandan francs from 300 shares traded in one deal on the equities market. The I&M Bank counter closed at 45 Rwandan francs as previous. The trading session recorded a total turnover of 13,500 Rwandan francs from 300 shares traded in one deal. Bradgo closed the counter at 125 Rwandan francs, Bank of Kigali at 250 Rwandan francs, Simerwa at 120 Rwandan francs, MTN Rwanda at 180 Rwandan francs, Equity Bank at 440 Rwandan francs, Kenya Commercial Bank at 370 Rwandan francs, National Media Group at 1,200 Rwandan francs, Ushuri Supermarket at 104 Rwandan francs, and RH Buffalo closed the counter at 526 Rwandan francs as the market closed. The currency market review of today. The Kenyan shilling buying price was 8.8 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 8.9 Rwandan francs. The Tanzanian shilling buying price was 0.43 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 0.44 Rwandan francs. The Ugandan shilling buying price was 0.27 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 0.28 Rwandan francs. The Burundian franc buying price was 0.5 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 0.51 Rwandan francs. The US dollar buying price was 1,006 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 1,026 Rwandan francs. The British pound buying price was 1,220 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 1,246 Rwandan francs. The euro buying price was 1,098 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 1,120 Rwandan francs. Today's weather forecast from the Rwanda Meteorology Department. From 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning, it is expected to be mostly cloudy in all parts of the country. The average wind speed expected is of between 3 meters per second and 4 meters per second. The minimum temperature is to be 11 degrees Celsius tomorrow morning in Nyabihu district. With that, we come to the end of tonight's edition.